Patron, we craft our tequila using high-quality natural ingredients without additives. No sweeteners, no extracts, no secrets. In fact, Patron's secret ingredient is that we have no secret ingredients. Just 100% additive-free tequila, made with 100% Weber Blue Agave, water, and thyme. Patron, 100% additive-free tequila. Visit patrontequila.com to learn more. The perfect way to enjoy Patron is responsibly. Copyright 2025, imported by Patron Spirits Company, Coral Gables, Florida. Tequila 40% ABV.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
Life is made up of many gorgeous moments. Cherish them all, big and small, with Blue Nile. Whether it's for yourself or a loved one, Blue Nile's unrivaled selection of expertly crafted fine jewelry and statement pieces help make all your moments sparkle. Blue Nile's experts are on hand to guide you, and their diamond guarantee ensures you get the highest quality at the best price. Celebrate a life well lived in the most radiant way and save up to 30% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
It's really cool.
Bonjour, hello, and welcome to the Rosbifs Rugby podcast, your one-stop shop for all things French rugby. Top 14, Pro D2, National, brilliant town, cities, bars, well, frankly, everything in between that makes French rugby such a stunning spectacle. I'm Richard. I'm joining you from Wales, of all places, and I'm on the line, of course, to Rosbif Rob, who is wearing today Weekly Watch. I was about to say Grenoble. We had this conversation before.
And the hat. And the Saxby hat. And I am actually wearing my Saxby t-shirt underneath this. So full Pro D2 to celebrate it coming back.
Full Pro D2 for the occasion. How have you been otherwise, or just sat there waiting for Pro D2 to start?
Yeah, just staring at the wall, to be honest. Lining up all my Pro D2 stash, thinking which ones are going to get worn in the office this week. Unfortunately, the Aix-en-Provence puffer might not see an outing in 24-degree heat in London. But same with some of the gloves and hats. But yeah,
good stuff. We're nearly there. We are nearly there. The Pro D2 season's upon us.
Feels astonishing, doesn't it? National started at the weekend.
It did. I was having a look at a National table today and was incredibly confused because unfortunately we've lost another club, haven't we? Which I know you posted about the other day. Carcaranier down on the kind of Côte d'Azur. So the Toulon double is not going to happen for a little while. Unfortunately, hope they can find a way to get back on their feet. But I saw it said obviously the points have been shared out, but it said they played 3 games. And I don't know, I couldn't work it out for a bit. And I thought maybe, in the spirit of madcap French rugby, they've just decided to do like a little 3-way tournament or something to get the season underway. But lo and behold,
when you first do rugby and like your first game of the season in like under 9s, you have like 3 halves against different teams, just so everyone gets a go.
Exactly. But then going down the table, I saw Carcaranier were on minus 52 points, which not ideal for them. But hopefully they'll be back at some point. But yeah, National's underway, and that leads us into Pro D2. And we have a guest, Rob. Do you wanna tee up our interview this week?
Yeah, I'm a guy that a journalist working in France, living the dream essentially of following French rugby and putting an English or a foreign language slant on it in Illtud Dafydd. A fascinating chat coming up about bit of the Pro D2 stuff, some real insight into behind the scenes of the stuff that we just don't have the privilege of getting in the UK, and certainly not in the English language. Kind of peeling behind the scenes of some of the club politics, which is quite cool. But yeah, anything else you want to add on that, Rich?
No, just to say we started on Pro D2 and like all the best conversations around anything sport related. We sort of rambled all over the place, and even found out something that Siya Kolisi isn't a big fan of. So shall we fire in? Shall we get him on?
Yeah.
Alrighty, enjoy. Okay, so last week on Rosbifs Rugby, we were delighted to be joined by Elgin Alderman of The Times, and we are continuing the Welsh French Rugby flavour this week. And we're delighted to be joined to talk all things French Rugby, and particularly Pro D2, by Illtud Dafydd of the AFP in France. Illtud, welcome to the Rosbifs Rugby podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Must say, before we've just had some fairly spectacular technical issues between London, Wales, and France. But when it was a little bit lighter, about half an hour ago, when we first got on, the skyscape behind you looked absolutely stunning. Where are you based, or where are you at the moment?
So I'm I live in northern Paris, just outside the KFA Ring Road. So to the northwest of me is La Défense. I can't just about see La Défense Arena and Racing's basketball indoor swimming pool nightclub stadium. And then just to the southwest is southeast, then is Stade de France de Saint-Denis, where I could actually see the closing ceremony of the Olympic Games. I could watch the fireworks go off and stuff from there. So it was quite cool. Yeah, I'm quite lucky to be on the 5th floor of an apartment here, and we do get nice views, especially in the summer with the sunsets.
Yeah, very nice. And maybe before we get into some of the nitty gritty, fascinated by how Welshman journalist, you've been in France. You alluded to there quite a while now, right? So how does that come about? How what's your story to being one of the foremost French rugby journalists in the English and Welsh language?
Yeah, it's a funny one because I never really realised how much or why I loved French rugby or French sport, especially French rugby. But then I just realised that when every second year, my mum and my dad would bring us on a holiday to France, and during those a week and a half, every summer I would pick up L'Équipe, even if I didn't understand what they were saying. I'd read it and look at the pictures. I'd pick up Midi Olympique and think, what is this yellow paper that they've got that comes on a Monday and a Friday? And I was just entranced by it all, and didn't realize how much of a big thing of it. And then I think I came on a rugby tour for my brother's rugby tour to a place called Clisson near Nantes when I was about 12, 13 for the 2007 World Cup. Watched the opening game in the bar and got served my first beer at 12, and then which was a big memory. And then since then, I went to journalism school, studied French beforehand, lived in France. This is my third stint in France after a gap year in Erasmus, and now properly living as a grown up, I guess, in France. I just love French rugby, and I just think it's something I think I've always dreamt of wanting to do, which is cover it, be that for written or on social media, or sometimes I'll do stuff with TV and radio. And I just think French rugby is a lot of people say that's where club rugby is at its best right now. But I think it's always been there, really, just because it has everything. It has local rivalries. It has crazy owners with a hell of a lot of money. It has history. It has amazing media coverage. It has some of the best players in the world. It has a structure you can follow and understand. And also you can surf on the trophy if you win at the end of every season. So that adds it to a certain extent as well. So so that's my story. I just and now I work covering the top 14 mainly and the French national team. And then when my boss allows me to, I like to dip into Pro D2 sometimes. I just need to give it a bit more of international angle and like the derby between, I don't know, Biarritz and Bayonne 3-4 years ago wasn't that interesting. But then if I said, oh, actually, Stefan Armitage kicked the winning penalty goal to send them, actually, yeah, that makes sense. You can do something. Yeah, that's where I'm.
Amazing.
One of the great games, that the relegation playoff to just there's so much context to it that makes that incredible.
You couldn't explain it in writing how manic it was. And there was the 5,000 capacity COVID rule, but the president before the game has said, we don't care, we just want people there. We need people behind it. We need people through the turnstiles, and amazing.
Incredible. I feel like, Rob, we need to do a few new sound bites, don't we, to promote this. I feel the list you've given there is pretty spot on, so we might be ripping that off pretty quickly. Yeah, look, so you mentioned there, Pro Day, the season starts. We've got top 14 coming up, I think, the week after. Pro Day starts on Thursday night, Brive v Oyonnax, if I'm not mistaken, which is a massive game to get things going. But from that kind of Roslam angle, as Elgin put it last week, the headline signing, I guess, in the UK press has been Courtney Laws to Brive, Johnny May to Soyo Angoulême, not quite as punchy, but still, hugely noteworthy. How have those sort of signings been reported and received in France? Is it a big deal there, or is it just another few lads coming over to play some club rugby and earn a few quid?
First, I think you need to notice that French rugby and coverage of French rugby, apart from L'Équipe as the national newspaper and Canal Plus as the national broadcaster, is very local, regionalised, almost town-based. So when Courtney Laws signed, and I think he went over to watch a game there, the local newspaper had an exclusive interview with him before anyone else. Shows how much power they have and how much influence they have. And La Montagne, which is a newspaper for Brive, and they also cover Clermont-Ferrand, it's like the regional paper. They went massive on it, huge on it. I did a massive 2-page interview spread with him. They've had photos with him and stuff. And he's massive, really. But Brive have always had an English connection. Simon Gillam, who was the full-time president and was heavily involved, is from England. Andy Goods played down the Steve Thompson, Mark Cueto, just off the top of my head. They've also had a few Welsh guys as well. So they're used to having British players from the British Isles, they definitely. And Laws is kind of the biggest name, but because of his age, maybe his player profile, I think, might be less than someone like George North. Maybe that's why Welsh bias as well, just because North is 3 or 4 years younger, and then potentially has 3 or 4 years longer to play down for Provence Rugby. So yeah, but Laws is a massive transfer coup, and Brive stacked the season. I thought they had the squad to go up last year, but they didn't have the coaching. Patrick Colazo and Pierre-Henri Boncon had too much work to do, too much catch up. But now they have the team, and I think Cohen Bosch at Fayaf from South Africa is also a really, really smart addition, and might just give them the extra 1% to get promoted.
Their owner's English as well, isn't he? Guy called Ian Osborne.
Yeah, he was thinking about going into English club rugby, and then realised how fantastic and great whatever French rugby is, and realised Brive is better than Bath, I guess.
Definitely.
We're actually heading in a couple of weeks, or three or 4 weeks, Rob. We're doing our first venture out for the season, and Friday night Brive Aurillac, which is something of a derby, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's weird. Like, if you ask someone from Brive, they would say Clermont would be their derby. If you ask them from Clermont, they would say we don't have a derby. And then Aurillac is near to Clermont, Clermont, and also near to Brive. But because they're in the centre of France, it's just, you can market a bit easier. And Brive is a great place to go and watch rugby. I watched the Pour de Deux semi-final down there with Van once. And Van, it's like an 800-kilometre drive, but they still had 400 fans go with the bagpipes and everything. And Brive won. It was there when they went back up. And I haven't had goosebumps like that for a club rugby game ever before. This was a second-tier semi-final, on a Sunday afternoon, and you just think, if you can produce that here in a town of, I remember speaking to Simon Gillam, the English guy who used to be president at Brive, and he said we are like listed as the 110th biggest town in France by population, but we are, at the time, they were among the 14th best rugby team. Just incredible. And also François Hollande is from there, and he's a figure of a lot of people like to take the mickey out of him, but his photo's everywhere in the town because he's the president from the town. So if you're down there, you might have a few you might even bump into him, because I think he still is a member of parliament for the area. So.
Rob, was it Francois Hollande on the?
I was just trying to think.
On the campaign trail?
I don't think it was. I think it was someone else, wasn't it?
I thought it was someone was downing pints in the local rugby club.
It was Francois Hollande. It was Francois Hollande. Yeah. We saw it somewhere on social media. He was kind of in a rugby club, kind of on the campaign trail, and the lads kind of got into him and started singing, and he was basically forced to down a pint, which was brilliant. I guess the thing for, like, I've heard it said, like, oh, Courtney Lawes is just going for a payday, you know, couple of years down in France. It's good for his bank balance. You know, he's kind of, it's like when footballers, I guess, used to go to the MLS, or like they go to China now. It's kind of like, I think people are painting it quite like that. But the sense I get is that he's a pretty hard nut professional regardless, and does love playing rugby. He's breaking a little bit, but he's put his body through the ringer. The other thing is, it's interesting perhaps with them having an English owner, but certainly if you're going to a club with a powerful French owner, you've got your kind of 30 league games. You're going to be playing as many of those 30 league games as the owner wants you to. Do you think it will be that? Do you think he will be playing and asked to play a lot, or will he kind of be protected and home games only? Or I guess same for like Johnny May as well. The kind of, will these guys be getting put through the ringer in Pro D2, do you think?
People say the top 14 is a marathon, isn't it? The season, well, the Pro D2 is a triple Ironman, or whatever, however let's put it. And I don't think Lawes will play the full 30, really, because they have some Pierre-Henri Boncon, head coach, who is very French, but also worked with Eddie Jones a bit. He's quite international. He's probably one of the most well-connected French coaches in the goal perspective. And I think he just understands that, okay, Lawes is definitely coming for his player impact, but he's also coming to put bums on seats at this stadium and selling shirts, even though that doesn't really make much money, really. And he'll be there when it counts. You know, the big home game is against the likes of Provence or Oyonnax or Béziers or Grenoble, when they need that big ball carrying, when they need someone with authority, when they need someone, when Ross Moriarty isn't quite on his game, which is rare in Pro D2, they've got Courtney Lawes there as well. You know, as a double sort of second bullet in the gun to get some stuff sorted. And I think Lawes will love it down there because it's such a great place to live. And there's nice weather. Okay, it's a bit lost, it's a bit in the middle of nowhere. There's not much to do apart from rugby, but Lawes loves his rugby, like you just said there, Rob. Like, he adores it, and he will get used quite a bit, but he's not going to play the away games in Aurillac, or he's not going to be going down to Nice just because they probably won't need him either, really, and he might enjoy the weekend at home as well.
Yeah, or might enjoy a weekend down on the south coast, you know.
Exactly. Or he might go as a travelling reserve and then pull up a hamstring.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I'm sure there's a bit of that. Where else is we spent a bit of time on Brive there, and I think understandably so. Another English connection I saw the other day is the Jamie Noon played there for years, didn't he? And I think Jamie Noon's son is tearing up trees. I don't know if he was, can't remember his name, but
Lewis Noon.
Lewis Noon. Yeah. Sorry, bit of an aside, but Brive aside, where else is your sort of attention turn? I know there's 16 teams, so we can't cover off everyone. You mentioned Nice there. But yeah, any other squad that's kind of piqued your interest in the off season?
Yeah, I think every squad has its like little like, oh, that's interesting, or he's like a lot of my focus is on the foreign players, so like that's an interesting English guy, or like there's a Welsh that's interesting, and so this and I think Provence, who potentially could have gone up last year. I was down in Aix-en-Provence this weekend for a friend's birthday, and one of my friends who also lives down there is the Espoirs coach there. So I got quite a lot of interesting info about how things are going for George North and Thomas Francis, and I'd like to see them what kind of player they could attract if they did get promoted. Because even before speaking to my mate, he was like, if we go up this year, wait and see who we sign. I was like, just tell me. I was like, I'm not going to tell you. So then if they do go up again, if they do go up next season, I think that there could be some big fish heading down there. And it's a really nice place to live, like half an hour the north of Marseille. Between, you haven't got the intense netters rugby fans of Toulon where they'll just stop you in the boulangerie. But at the same time, you still have people who really love the sport down there. So yeah, X will be definitely one to look out for. Grenoble, I don't know how they managed to get the access match final last year, but Sam Davis's left boot definitely helped them. They've lost Steve Blanco-Mapaz, the captain, who's a big role and a big play.
You said, you said about Courtney Laws, he's not going to play 30 games. Well, Steve Blanco-Mapaz did play 30 games last year, didn't he? So,
and some. I think it was 34.
Wow. So Grenoble, I like them. And then even someone like Aminasi Toumaba, who's a Fijian who's gone from Pau to Béziers. I just like that sort of like move where I think someone like Toumaba is a top 14 player, but he may have gone down there because Pau are prioritizing a lot of the French players now. He's getting a bit older. They like signing the young players with Sébastien Picornier, so he was let go. But then he could be tearing up choosing Pro D2. Like, why isn't this guy not in the top 14? You know, those are guys. What else? There's a lot. Nice could be interesting. Jordan Taufua, a bit
that's
similar,
a huge signing, isn't it?
A bit like Toumaba, who he was captain of Lyon this time last year. You know, and he's going to Nice, and they've definitely told them, look where you can live, and then you can play rugby as well. Those are the real standouts for me. And I think I noted down also Clément Dumont, who is heading to Béziers from Montpellier from Montpellier to Béziers as a flanker, who was with, remember correctly, Carcassonne, I think, 2 years ago with a scrum-at, and he wears like an arm forward, plays in the back row. In Pro D2, I was like, who is this guy? He's unreal. Signed from Montpellier, just hasn't. Well, like a lot of players from Montpellier have had problems, so it's gone back down to Pro D2, and I think he might do some well. So yeah, those guys I look out for, and but I do think Brive really, they should go up, shouldn't they? Really, with that squad, it'll be strange if they didn't go up.
So my kind of pick, I think, for the league winners, I think is going to be Oyonnax. Like, if you look at some of the signings they've made, it is a serious squad they've got. I know they did all right last year in the top 14. Like, they were never, after the kind of first few weeks, it felt like they were never really going to be threatening anyone kind of in terms of staying up. But some of the guys they've signed, like, you know, Ollie Kebble, you've got an international prop there. Narisia, the hooker from Racing. Manuel Lindekar, you've got another international player there. Antoine Mikel was amazing at times for Bordeaux last year. You've got your guy that scored the wonder try in the last minute on the last day for Mont-de-Marsan, Ramo to Tabua, the rapid Fijian bloke. Chris Smith from the Bulls, like, bit of a stalwart for the Bulls, who's kind of dictated them around play, like, has made the Bulls were really hard to beat at Loftus Versfeld for obvious reasons, but he was kind of he was kind of seen as a big thing behind that, as a kind of someone that, he's not a flashy player, but my God, he gets the job done. So I think, like, there's a lot of good players for a squad that was top 14 pretty much last year. I think it'll be interesting to see. They look like they've signed very much with the intention of, we're going straight back up. Whereas I think Brive had a bit of an issue, didn't they, with kind of, they took it a bit lightly almost. Whereas this Oyonnax look like they know what they're doing and then what they want. So I think it's going to be those two and Provence that I think are going to be scrapping it out in the top.
I find it hard to like Oyonnax though, just because it's, like you said, it's happens to go because it snows there all the time. And it's pretty much in Switzerland, in the Jura, which is actually a nice place to be. But like, if you're a rugby player, you don't live there because it's a town of 11,000 people. If you want to go for a beer, a lot of times I've gone skiing in Oyonnax and bumped into some massive second row in an Oyonnax jacket. I was like, what are you doing here? I was like, just out for a drink. And then you realise it's not that far. And yeah, they just lack a bit of glamour. They don't have like the big like European Cup winning history of Brave and like they're not on the Côte d'Azur like X. Even like Biarritz have got more like something to them, you know. And even though, like it's nothing against Orient as a town or people or the club, but just I would prefer other teams to go up. Let's just put it diplomatically.
I hadn't quite realised how small a town it was. Population's 22,277. That is the stadium's like 10,000, which is pretty impressive. But I hadn't quite realised it was that small. I think we had Zach Farrance on a few months back now, and he kind of started at Oyonnax, and he was kind of like, "What? Like it's just there's just nothing there." Like, it's a bit different. I think Rich and I think when we've talked about it in the past, Aix-en-Provence is probably number one, or certainly close for the towns we visited. So it's a completely different prospect. I guess it's they've kind of come up through Christophe Urios, didn't they? And they built that kind of gritty identity and become the kind of place that is hard to go. Bit like Grenoble, maybe a little bit, but that's obviously a slightly bigger town. You mentioned them briefly there, and a basket case of a club, Biarritz. What do you think is going to happen with them this year? Are they on a better footing? Are they still shambolic? From a UK perspective, they've got Jonathan Joseph, they've got Tyler Morgan that's there. Yeah. So a couple of international class British centres. Is it all sorted now? Is it going to be as shambolic again?
I think it'll be more settled, definitely. Just because the big rift there was between the town mayor, which in French sport, the local council and local authorities are always quite influential, and the then president, Jean-Baptiste Algige, who was a proper firebrand, liked the tension, let's put it that way, and would do stuff, would like ban like the local press, as I mentioned earlier, from the games, or had like caps with "Make Biarritz Great Again" on like put down and stuff in the stadium, and just like turned a really, really great club, you know. From I don't know, some people our generation, we remembered their 2 Champions Cup final defeats, I think, especially against Munster, and then how they had that incredible squad: Arnaud de Kruyashvili, Trai, Brusque, like Livremont. They roll off the tongue, you know, the names.
Yeah, and Shaw as well.
Yeah, exactly. Even like Tazuka and Gwenya. Like, as an Ospreys fan, I can never not have nightmares about him. But yeah, it'll be more settled. Sean Hegarty, who's come in, the Irish, French, Kiwi guy, calm everything down. He's brought in Boris Bouraro, who was the Espoirs Academy coach at Stade Francais, who told Tom, "You either give me a senior job or I'm going." Then he went to Biarritz. And what he's taken with him, he's taken the guy who was an interesting non-rugby side note, is a guy who used to work in like the communication social media department of Stade Francais, who's from the Basque Country. He's gone home, and if you watch what Biarritz do now on social media, there's far more Basque language being used. And it's because someone from he's not directly from the town, but from the area, has realised we need to belong to this and be a part of this and make it about where we're from. Yeah, because Biarritz is seen as a glamorous place. It's almost like the Nice of the Atlantic coast, you know, where they've got like a massive 5-star hotel on the beachfront, and there's a casino there.
You've got some nice recollections of that beach, haven't you, Richard?
No, I haven't.
My birthday a few years ago, Richard, we were staying in Bayonne. We went to the Bayonne game. We were going to Pau the next day, and 2 of us made it back to the flat, and then the other 3 came charging in the door at 7 a.m, having basically walked the length of the beach trying to find a taxi.
Yeah, we got hijacked by a couple of enthusiastic Bayonne fans who took us for a few drinks in Biarritz, and we couldn't get back. Basically,
and I think that's a 1.7 kilometers that separated both stadiums. I think.
Yeah, it's not far.
No, but if you need a taxi, it's not happening. So
100%. We've got to mention it. I know, Rob, we maybe do it another time. You spoke about the sort of not reviving, but perhaps a little bit more emphasis on the Basque heritage. Have you seen I think officially it was announced today, but the Biarritz home shirt for the season coming with the Basque flag is quite something.
it's anything. It could only be Basque, couldn't it?
Yeah.
It's a nice little touch, I have to admit, and it's always cool when you go down there and you feel it's not France, it is different, and the heritage I've got of like playing games across in San Sebastian, Donostia, having players from the region like Emil Haranodricu wearing the Basque flag on his like gloves, for Christ's sake, like it's cool, and it's a special part of France. One of my good friends lives down there. And like anytime he's like, "I'll come over for the weekend," I'm like, "Yes, my train ticket's booked, so let's go." It's really cool. But I have to admit, I've got a bit more of a soft spot Bayonne because it's a bit less glamorous. And what's funny is this is a bit of a generalization. The people from the Basque Country who live inland support Bayonne, and the tourists, Parisians who live on the coast who don't spend too much time. They have the holiday homes down there. They support Biarritz. So I'm a bit more Bayonne, I think, with that.
Fanning the flames.
Yeah, you've already done Oyonnax. You've now done Biarritz. Any more shots you want to fire?
14 to go.
Yeah, I just love Bayonne as a town. It's just a beautiful town. But also like when we went to the Aguilera, I mean, it was the middle of January, Rich, and it was genuinely cold, wasn't it? But it felt a little bit sad compared to the match day experience at the Jean Daugé, kind of 1.7 kilometers away. It was kind of felt very tired. It's really cool with the whole red and white branding everywhere. Like it's still, you can tell it's still a very cool stadium, but it did feel a little bit like the club is, I guess. It's kind of the former glories are in the past. They are former.
Yeah, like I think professional rugby over the past 10 years has outgrown Biarritz, and they just haven't had the right people in charge of it, sadly. When someone like Bayonne, Philippe Taïeb, no matter what you want to think about him having an argument with Yannick Brew at the pitch side, like he runs a good ship. Sadly for Bale, that's how it is for now. But we would all love to see a proper Basque derby in the top 14 and someone's dad running on the field again, maybe.
It's an amazing clip, that, isn't it? It's so rogue.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you've been down a bit to see a mate down there. You were down in Aix-en-Provence not too long ago. What we really want to know is what are your go-tos? What are the grounds and the towns, and I guess they're in the places that for you are the proper French rugby experience.
I find it weird because France, as a general, is weird. This is because of my experience over now. It's such a regional place. Like that's why the local newspapers are so strong. Is because everywhere is so culturally different and linguistically in some cases as well. Like a rugby game in Vannes, in the top 14 this year, will be totally different to what you'd experience in La Rochelle, which is I don't know how many 100 kilometers. That's the closest top 14 game to it, But even then, the atmosphere in La Rochelle compared to the atmosphere in Bordeaux-Bègles, the Chabandelma, is a bit different as well. And they're quite close, But even the atmosphere in Stade Jean-Bouin and La Défense Arena, which they are, I don't know how many kilometers away from each other, all in Western Paris. They have totally different experiences. As a fan and I imagine as a player and as a journalist covering those two teams as well, they're totally different. But I would say on the bucket list of anyone who wants to watch like rugby in France, I think you have to go to Stade Jean Daugé. I think you have to go to Toulouse and probably Stade Ernest Vallon more than the Stadium.
Yeah.
And for a top 14 game, because the atmosphere is different there, I think you have to go to Clermont as well for a top 14 game, a big top 14 game. When like a Toulouse come to town, that's when you feel like the Yellow Army or the Cyber Volcan, that whole place just erupts really. So those would be the top three, and then maybe alternative edges. I'd probably put Brive in there as well. And then what would be my fifth and final? My soft spot, bizarrely, would be Stade Francais because one of my, how can I say this? Because I live near Paris now, and I just think what Max Grazzini did to that club and what he did to French rugby when he was president revolutionized the sport in the country. Like people didn't wear pink shirts. People didn't play games in Stade de France. People didn't have elephants walking around the pitch before a game. They didn't have Cancan Gilston, Moulin Rouge dancing. They didn't have pink goalposts. they didn't have players naked in the calendar every year from teams around the world, from the whole league, and I just have a soft spot for them, even though they're a bit not tacky, but they're seen as like bourgeoisie in the 16th arrondissement in the southwest. Like right now, they've changed their image, and I like what it is like when I went to watch Toulouse lose there last season when Dupont came off the bench, and you just felt like there was like 26,000 people there, and it was bouncing, and you're like, this is so weird for Paris, which is not really a sporting city. You get Roland Garros every 2 years, you get PSG with all the tourists going to watch Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe back in the day. But it just felt like, well, these guys like actually care about the sport, and it's just quite cool. But and it's probably a bit easier for people to do as well. So like, if whenever Toulouse playing Stade Francais, go to the Classico, I'd say.
Nice. Yeah, it's not. I saw my first ever top 14 game was actually again. Is that a Stade Francais Cup you just swigged from them? Yeah, nice.
Intentionally.
Superb. Lovely bit of brand placement. I bizarrely saw them play. I visited Paris about 12, 13 years ago. Saw them play at a ground called the Stade Charlotte, which I don't even know if that. It was pretty empty. There weren't many people knocking about, so I felt like I didn't do it.
Game, so it's good.
Yeah. So overdue. I think probably a proper look at the Stade Jean Bouin. We saw last year, Rob, didn't we? It was sorry, go from it.
Go ahead. You go.
I was saying that we saw they put on an event with the Folie Douce, didn't they? The après ski thing, which looked quite leery.
But for the Leicester game, they were still like on the day or like the day before. I remember on the Friday thinking like, could I fly out and fly back to Paris in a day to watch Leicester? Because there were still tickets going for like 30 euros, 40 euros. And it was like, one of our mates, a Harlequins fan, is like, oh, well, you can go and watch a worse game at the Stoop for 70 quid. Like, do they kind of have a little bit more trouble generally in top 14 selling out the European games as opposed to the top 14 games? Is it?
Yeah, I'd say
you mentioned that for Stade Francais and for Clermont, it would have to be a big top 14 game.
Yeah, like Clermont maybe 10 years ago, like Champions Cups every time. But just because it's just like it ebbs and flows, and the Champions Cup has its problems as it is anyway, attracting broadcasters, and then what comes out with fans and stuff, and complicated structures and stuff. So, and there's the Boucle de Brenos dates back to 1892, I think, or 18 something. Like the Champions Cup, no competition in World Rugby. I think the Currie Cup is a bit older, can compete with that really, and then also. Yeah, you've just got history and context to stuff really. But what will be cool this season, Racing are playing 3 games in a stadium that could potentially be even worse than Stade Charlotte. So it's a 4th team football ground in Créteil, which is southern east suburb, which has an athletics track around it, has only 2 covered stands, and that is weirdly where Owen Farrell will make his Racing to do home debut. Wow. Which is just nuts. It's 12,000 seater stadium named after a local politician, and you just think, "Wow, this is."
Oh God, yeah, because it's still for the start of the top 14 season. It's still it's going to be a swimming pool still, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. Jeez, I hadn't even thought about that. That's crazy,
it's just another thing that's quite cool that we'll look back in 5 years' time and think, "Oh, do you remember when Owen Farrell scored that unreal drop goal, but on like a pitch that was like a 4th-tier football ground?" Like French rugby just churns up these sort of happening as an event. You just think this is just nuts, but at the same time it's just hilarious, and you've got to roll with it.
I'm amazed they don't try and go to like Massy or Suresnes or someone like that. Like, I don't know, I feel like that just makes a bit more sense. Like,
I think Massy Stadium would be even worse, I think.
Really?
Yeah, sadly Massy, even though they tried to brush it up the last time I went, but it just you can tell it's a national stadium and not a Pro D2 top 14 stadium. And Suresnes, I've never been, but they're quite ambitious in national. But I agree with you. It would be quite cool. But then what Racing do, which is really cool, is they take games to like biggish football grounds a bit near. Like they went to Auxerre last year. They went to Le Mans. They went to Le Havre, and they haven't sold them out. But like it's just trying new stuff, and seeing rugby in different places. Like Créteil is not really. It still is Paris. It still is part of the Paris region. But I just like the ambition they have of trying stuff, especially that sort of stuff. And they've got a squad to sell tickets as well. So.
Yeah, and as on that point, I know we didn't if we're blindsiding you a bit, apologies, but speaking a bit about Racing there, while we've got you, we're going to have to ask one. So the real headline signing of the last couple of seasons, I suppose, Owen Farrell kicking off there this year. Racing have, I think, probably fair to say, been somewhat underachievers, and the Siya Kolisi saga kind of yo-yoing possibly between a return back to South Africa. What's your big old question, but what's your view on those two guys currently, and where are Racing at?
Yeah, Racing are interesting. But I really like going there because they always give you free coffee in return for press, which is always a bonus. And it's just a nice setup. Like you get a really nice welcome. You feel like it's proper family to it. But then I hate going to the stadium because you feel like you're in a nightclub and not in a rugby ground. But maybe that's because I'm old school and I'm used to going to St Helens or the Knoll or the Brewery Field and whatever when I was younger. And they just lack consistency. Be that during a game, through a whole season, over a course of a few seasons, putting together a good squad. The amount of times you see them go up 35-7 at half time and then only just about win 35-31, and you just think, well, how is this happening? But then I thought Stuart Lancaster would calm that down and bring him sort of like a French, like Anglo-Saxon way of thinking about stuff, being a bit more methodical, a bit more calm. And things started to get a bit better last year. I don't know really what happened internally, but someone like Yannick Nyanga leaving, I don't think it was a good sign because he is a bit like Pierre-Henri Boncon. He's got very good English. He's very well connected with outside of France rugby-wise, very well respected. He's a big reason which Siya Kolisi signed at Racing. He's left under like not a suspicion cloud, but not much talk about it in the press, etc. So we don't know what's going on there. But then coming in, Owen Farrell, Racing love having their big name number 10s. Absolutely love it. Like you have to though, because number 10 is the jersey that people love watching. You know, is on the TV the most. So they love having Simon. I'm sure Farrell like it here because I saw him was dressed up as did a fancy dress on some like Boris Spike over the weekend, which looked quite fun.
Power Ranger.
Yeah, Power Ranger. Yeah, exactly. And Farrell could have a lot of fun in that 4G pitch, especially with someone when he's got a 12-13 combination of Joshua Tuisova and Gareth Fiku, like most fly halves in world rugby would like bite their hand off and take a pay cut to do that. And then the Siya Kolisi saga is such a shame really for Kolisi because he came over 3 weeks after knocking out France from the home World Cup in a bit of controversial manner with some refereeing decisions. But people still welcomed him. And I just thought, well, I reckon he would be the only member of that whole South Africa squad to have such a welcome. And the things that he could potentially do with areas of northern Paris that are really impoverished, areas where some of his teammates come from, like Cameroon comes from Bobigny, which is one of the poorest towns in France. You think he could do something big with his foundation. That's off the field. And then on the field, he's not the flanker he was at the 2019 World Cup, but he still is that leader on the field. You still feel like people get around him, and even if he doesn't speak much French, whenever he does speak in the dressing room in English, people are like, well, this is Siya Kolisi, 2-time World Cup winning captain. But the way that it's ending, I think, it's just a shame really for him and the club that they made such an effort to get him over. I just maybe don't think he prepared properly for it, maybe to realize how much of a slog it was and how difficult it was, and maybe the club had aspirations of him stopping his international career. Logically, I think they hoped as well he would, winning a second World Cup age 31 or 32. It kind of made sense that he would stop his career, his national career, but he didn't. I think Rassie Erasmus was like, nah, come on, let's go for a hat trick. They did manage to, so yeah, it's just a shame really for him and his family who could have such an amazing experience over here, but they've only done 12 months of it. Sadly.
Felt to me like he perhaps wasn't quite prepared to be playing every week, like if he had set aside his international career, I don't think he was quite prepared to get beaten up every week, almost like just the kind of physicality of it. I don't know, but that's not to say that he kind of should leave. Like he obviously some pretty interesting comments at the end of the season, but yeah, I think it'd still be nice to see him do well there.
And there's also ways around it. Like, I don't know, like Toulon managed it with a squad of 4-year-olds and they won 3 Champions Cups in a row. I don't know. I just think it's a way of being more sensible around it. Like Blackies both are never trained, nor did Johnny Wilkinson. Never trained, but they trained lightly. There's ways of doing around it because you know that these guys, you don't need them to train that hard every week out. You just need them to turn up for 60 minutes on a Saturday. Okay, maybe it's every Saturday, but they will. There's just ways of doing it, and it's just a sad way to go, really. And I think he had something to bring to wrestling, big time, big definitely. But yeah, it's just a shame. I'm sad because I loved going to watch him, because it's just cool to have someone who, in a post-match press conference, would speak so like eloquently. Well, not eloquently, but just would have something to say and would put stuff into context and perspective, and made you realize that there's more to life than rugby. And it's just I'm sad on a personal note, but I'm also sad for him.
We didn't touch there on the actual big story that's come out of racing in the last few months, which is of course Stuart Lancaster signing his son. I assume with the plan with Owen Farrell shifting out to 12 to accommodate Dan Lancaster. I don't know if anyone's seen any of the training patterns in pre-season. They
lost to Brive, didn't they? They lost to Brive in a friendly.
Which was in Limoges. Have I made one of the pre-season?
No, I think it was in a town called Sarlat. Which is not too bad from Brive, which is like duck country in the Dordogne. If you go for lunch or dinner there, everything is duck on the menu.
Nice.
Every start and main is duck, as in to the point where you're just like, is it a joke? So you've got duck sausage, you've got duck breast, you've got duck thigh, all with different But it's really good.
Rich Sarlat was the team I saw play against
JOP
Conflon Kaniki, yeah.
Was it Sarlat in this season when they had like a budget of 1.2 million?
I think they did pretty well. I think they got promoted, yeah.
So it was a season when they had a French guy who was in San Francisco, tech millionaire, bought the club, did some dodgy stuff on bought bots on Twitter, and at one stage they were the second most followed French club on social media. Bought some Fijian and Tongans from Port de Deux to play in Federal 1 or whatever it was.
There were some pretty big units playing for them, yeah.
Yeah, there's a point where I think there was even 2 teams who said, no, we're refusing to play because it's dangerous for us.
Wow.
And then the money left, and they were just like, well, it's gone now, isn't it? And another great example of French rugby being absolutely crazy.
That's fantastic. Rob, I saw your eyes light up at the mention of a place that almost exclusively serves duck. Yeah. And how you're saying it's quite close to Brive? Are we gonna lose you for a day either side when we go in a few weeks? That sounds like the sort of thing you might go ferreting off to do?
I think that sounds like a good detour to me, Richard.
Maybe then, I appreciate we've kind of gone a little bit all over the place there, but look, we really appreciate you joining us this evening. If we do make it out to Paris, I know it's an enormous place, but maybe just to finish off on the theme of gastronomy, maybe a bit less duck based. Where are we saying we're going to have to sneak into? Maybe pre-Stade Jean Bouin.
This is funny because I speak to a lot of my French colleagues, and I do a lot of interviews with foreign players, and I talk to a lot of them about the food they eat here. I have French colleagues, and then I send the whole list of the quotes in English so they can do an article about themselves. And they're like, every single week there was at least one question about French food. I'm like, because it's good. And there's always a funny story that comes out of it from somewhere, Bernard Jack, when we was at Grenoble, he banned cakes from the squad because whatever, or what was it? Siya Kolisi had tried frog's legs, but he was scared of snails. And when I spoke to him last, little stuff like that, just incredible. Paris is a city where, a bit like London, when you get food from all over the world, but you just have to go. The classics are something like a bouillon, which is bouillon is what you'd say in stock, and they're really the first restaurants you ever had in Paris where butchers would sell stock for workers to have for dinner or for lunch. And there's that kind of tradition that's come on over the centuries, and now they're kind of a bit hipster, a bit cool, and they're really reasonably priced, good French quality food. There's about a dozen or so around the city, and you just put bouillon into Google Maps wherever you are, and you'll find one, and they're sorted, and you can get duck breast there if you want as well.
Alrighty. I think we're probably there. We didn't. Oh, maybe just to round things off, going back to Pro Day there. Who's going down? Feels like a while ago we spoke about it, but yeah.
It's Pro D2 is. I like to compare Pro D2 to the Championship in football because I think top 14 would be the equivalent of the Premier League, and how much money you can potentially gain from getting promotion, but then also that step down to League One or National One is difficult because it's so competitive to get to Pro D2 because potentially we could get to the top 14. I don't think Nice will go down. I think they might be all right. But I think someone like Valence might struggle, even though they've got Welshman and Owen Lane, and Valence is quite a nice place to live as well. But no, sadly, I think Valence might.
They barely won a game away. I think they won one right at the end of they beat Orient right at the end of the season, didn't they? I've been looking at Montalban through my fingers. I think I'm not feeling too confident after the way they finished the season, and they've not had a great pre-season either, and there's not an abundance of signings. I think Valence, at least last year, had that brilliant home record. Yeah, signed Owen Lane is pretty decent signing that. It's probably I was thinking it's probably between those two, and who knows? I'm like, who knows with Biarritz? Like it could all kind of. The wheels could come off again.
You could even chuck someone like Daxon, who last year when they came up, they coming straight down. They had a cracking season, but they just had like that second album syndrome where it's like
they've got Joe Nicera though. They'll be all right. The new Rapeni Thau. He'll score a load of tries. I'll be fine. But yeah, those are the kind of ones that I think Nice will be all right. I think Taufu is a brilliant signing.
Yeah, they're looking good. Look, Illtud, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a genuine pleasure to hear everything from Pro Day thoughts to what Siya Kolisi scared of and a few other bits in between. So hopefully we'll catch up with you again. But thanks for your time and sticking with us.
Pleasure anytime, and enjoy the season because the Pro D2 is the best rugby league in the world, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely, enjoy. I hope we're slightly jealous. You're probably going to find a little corner, I imagine, to watch the game on Thursday. We might be getting the Amazon Fire Sticks out. We'll see how we go. Brilliant. Illtud Dafydd, thank you so much for being on the Rosbifs Rugby podcast. Okay, illuminating conversation. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I kind of. It's interesting that he's got kind of quite a Parisian perspective on it. I know he kind of lives in Paris or near Paris in Saint-Denis. But it's not something I envisage saying. So, oh yeah, they can't play at their home ground because it's a swimming pool. Like, it just hadn't occurred to me that the Paralympics are still going on and wrestling for all the marvel of the ladder fonts becoming an Olympic swimming pool, albeit a shallow one. The mind boggles as to what they kind of where rugby ranks in the pecking order of ladder fonts arena.
Yeah, it's slightly mad, isn't it? It's
not like they can go to Yves Manoir either because that's currently a hockey pitch.
Hockey pitch, yeah. Who knows? But is it 3 games down in Créteil? For someone that's going to be a real good on their kind of rugby passport, isn't it? That's going to be a good stamp to have, albeit not overly not overly praiseworthy in terms of the ground itself, but who knows?
Yeah.
And maybe it's as you say, it's good to. I know we didn't go into wild detail, but a Parisian opinion, like we don't talk too much about the Paris site. And
well, you're particularly read about the Parisian sides, Richard, and kind of it's not, they don't really like rugby. And I know we had the Lions tour chat last week, but I know when we've spoken about it in the past, you're like, nah, Parisian clubs don't deserve it. They're not real rugby teams, and you're particularly rude about them. So.
Well, yeah, okay. Well, feels a slight stretch. Feels a slight stretch, but Racing, they got to pull it together. That's what I'll say to that. Okay, Pro Day Dirt, it kicks off this weekend. Anything else you wanna dive into? You mentioned there, Brive had a really good win over Racing in pre-season. Mont de Marsan did fall at home to a sold out stadium to Toulouse, but that looked pretty cool. Do you see Aurillac beat in a pre-season friendly?
Go for it.
Another great start to the season for the Montpellier Madness. They got turned
my
over away at
God.
Aurillac.
I think
with a
Oyonnax beat Benetton, I think. Or they drew. It was a very close game. I saw that they were playing Benetton.
That's
So
cool.
it was, it's quite a good little preseason.
And
Just to
someone was playing.
finish off on Illtud, El Clasico, but at the Stade Jean-Bouin, is on Saturday the 19th, or it's due to be the weekend of the 19th of April. For Stade Francais versus Toulouse, and the return fixture at Ernest Vallon is actually just before or just after Christmas. So potentially something to eye up in. That's quite a good time for us, isn't it? Mid-April.
Interesting. Mid-April could be good.
Rich, I cut you off on the friendlies.
No, I just saw that Montpellier got turned over. I mean, obviously, kind of a lot of guys playing, but a lot of big names were in there. I think Tambwe played. I think a few of the Rogues played. And yeah, they got beaten. So yeah, to me, that just screams from there they're going to win the top 14. But we'll maybe go into that in a bit more detail next week. Shall we briefly touch on the Petit Fours? What has piqued your attention in the last few days?
It's interesting. We should have really gone through this with Illtud, but do you want to hear my English language speaking 15 of the top of Pro D2?
I would. It better be good, because it's quite a broad net to cast. That
So it is.
Let's hear it.
UK and Ireland, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Pacific Islands, USA, Canada, and any other known heritage. So if you're kind of born in South Africa and you ended up playing for another country.
Okay.
I appreciate not all South Africans have English as a first language, similarly the Pacific Islands, but here you go. Lisa Prop was tricky, but Nefi Leatagunga, Dax, Penny Narisia, now he's moved to Oyonnax, Thomas Francis, tight head prop. You've got two Provençal Aussies and Ned Hannigan and Isaac Rodder in the second row. Your back row is Courtney Laws, Cornell Dupree, and Ross Moriarty. Jack Maunder at 9, Sam Davies at 10. I've kept with Inga Finau at 12 because he was so good last season. With Jonathan Joseph at 13, which has forced George North out onto the left wing with Johnny May on the right wing, and Kerwin Bosch at fullback. Your bench is Motu prop, Gareth Milanovic at loose head, Marcel van der Merwes, cap South African at tight head, Piulu Farsalele has gone back. He's got the Biarritz, hasn't he?
Biarritz.
Jordan Taufua, who's now at Nice. Jonathan Rura at 9, Chris Smith at 10, and our man Jope Nacera as the reserve winger. But I have left out of that Ewan Johnson, who played 3 tests for Scotland over the summer in the second row. Tamar Harrison didn't make the cut. You've got a whole host of fly halves. Jimmy Gopperth, Tim Nanai Williams, Zach Holmes, Ben Botica, Billy Searle. You've got centres-wise, no room for Sam Johnson, no room for Chris Farrell, no room for Tyler Morgan or Owen Lane. Vatabua, the ex-Poe centre that Illtud mentioned as well. So you've got some real top quality players from outside of France playing in Pro D2. I think that's the point that we can take away there. I think some of the quality that doesn't even make a 15 of English speakers, or you could even have Britain Irish, British Isles 15, and you still don't get kind of recent internationals in there. So it's frightening.
Quite something, isn't it? With the depth and the profile of some of these players there now, you wonder if is it going to kind of go to form as you'd expect, and sort of a bit of a slug and home games. I mean, I think it will to an extent, but I wonder if you might start to see a few more kind of away wins and a few more turn-ups, just purely because of the the size and quality of some of these squads, or whether they'll concentrate it, or is it even worth asking the question, because it's always absolute lunacy week on week. Will someone replace Ruan with a resident barber in the ground? That's probably the main question I want to see answered. It's genuinely really looking forward to it.
Do you want to hear my attempt to predict the unpredictable?
Go on.
So my 1-16, this is how it will definitely not end up at the end of the season. Oyonnax top, Provence second, Brive third, Grenoble fourth, Béziers fifth, and an improving Agen getting the final barrage spot for me.
Nice.
Mont-de-Marsan and Nevers, the perennial kind of barragistes, or nearly barragistes, 7th and 8th. Big year for Sax V. They're on the rise, mate. They finished the season well. Johnny May's going to run in a boatload of tries, feeding off bad boy George Tilsley. Aurillac are going to be 10th. Tough place to go still. Colomiers 11th. Dax will struggle. Bit of second season syndrome. 12th. Biarritz, still a little bit of a basket case. They're going to be 13th. Nice will be 14th. Valence will be 15th. And Montauban will be bottom. That's the one I'm quite confident on. I'm pretty confident Oyonnax will be top. And I'm pretty sure Montauban will be bottom.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, obviously, who knows what will happen, but that doesn't seem totally a million miles off. I think Oyonnax will be really strong. Like the last time, I know how Brive and Provence look incredibly powerful, but I think Oyonnax, it's just more game tape. They'll be tougher. They absolutely lauded the league the year they went up, didn't they?
Yeah.
They were a proper stretch clear.
Properly,
albeit you've still got to win the final. But yeah, so I think they're a pretty good bet. Someone like Chris Smith at 10. We mentioned it earlier, but in fact they've got Zach Holmes as a second 10. Like that would not. I know he's not the player he was, but that would be a pretty big name signing at 10 elsewhere in Pro D2. I think it's fair to say, and the fact that that's going to be their second, maybe even third choice, I think it shows the sort of strength they're going to have. Stuart Holding's at Brive, isn't he?
Oh, sorry, yeah, he's at Brive. I was thinking of Chris Farrell, but yeah, he's a quality player. I think Grenoble, yes, they overcame. I mean, they finished. Where did they finish? Third at the end, or were they fourth? I think they were fourth, but they overcame that 8-point deficit. But they've lost Steve Blancmapaz. They've also lost Barnabé Massa.
Yeah.
I think they've lost a couple of others. Sam Davis was obviously brilliant last year, and you'd expect him to continue. But the squad generally just doesn't look like it's been. I kind of expected them to be bringing in some big names, but maybe they are under some financial constraints, because that was what they got pinged for. But then there's not that much turnover of kind of. Perhaps that's a good thing not having that many signings, but I think they'll be up there. I just don't think they'll quite kick on to kind of be top of the league as close as they got to kind of getting promoted last year. I think Agen were the kind of one that I thought maybe something a bit different. Billy Searle was brilliant last year in a pretty poor Biarritz side. Be good to see him behind a decent pack, and I think they've made a few other decent signings. It feels about time for them to kick into gear and push themselves back up into some top 14 reckoning. Those are the kind of main thoughts. Aurillac and Colomiers, I just don't have much to say. Nevers as well. Mont-de-Marsan have lost a couple of players. I think losing Ramo to Bua is quite big. But yeah, they're kind of always there or thereabouts, aren't they? I'm fascinated to see the Courtney Laws effect. I think that Brive squad is just, there's so many good players in it now.
Yeah. 100%.
Looking forward to catching them in a few weeks.
Absolutely. Not long now. Should we leave it there?
Yeah, I didn't have any specific petit fours or anything generally. I think I did, but I've forgotten. I didn't write it down, so it's gone.
We'll save them for next week. Okay. We have been the Rosbifs Rugby podcast. Thank you, massive thank you, in fact, to Illtud Dafydd for joining us. As a real treat to have him on. We'll hope to be bringing you some more guests in the very near future. But otherwise, follow us on all the usual channels, and have a splendid week.
Hit
Au
like,
revoir.
hit subscribe, etc. Au revoir.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
Oh, 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 O'Reilly Auto Parts.